Red warning lights bathed the command center in crimson shadows as Admiral Rebecca Stone reviewed the latest intelligence reports from the front lines, her weathered hands gripping the metal railing that surrounded the central holographic display, the weight of humanity's survival pressing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. The war against the hegemony had raged for 12 brutal years, transforming once peaceful human colonies into fortress worlds where children learned to shoot before they could properly read, where every civilian wore combat armor as naturally as breathing, where the very concept of peace had become a distant memory from another lifetime. Lieutenant Commander Harris approached from the communication station with news that would change everything, his young face bearing the premature lines that all humans wore these days, the marks of constant stress and perpetual vigilance that had become the signature of their species during this endless conflict. "Admiral, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from the hegemony fleet positioned at the edge of our sensor range," Harris reported, his voice carrying a mixture of confusion and disbelief that such a message could even exist, given the aliens' previous refusal to engage in any form of diplomatic contact. Stone turned toward the lieutenant commander with the sharp attention of a predator sensing potential danger, her instincts honed by years of fighting an enemy that had never shown mercy or quarter to any species they encountered, an enemy whose very nature seemed antithetical to anything resembling negotiation or compromise. "What's the content of their message?" she asked, already suspecting that whatever the hegemony was proposing would involve some form of deception or trap, because in her experience nothing good ever came from enemies who suddenly decided to talk after years of relentless warfare. Harris activated his portable display unit and began reading the translated text with obvious skepticism, coloring every word. They're requesting immediate cessation of hostilities and proposing formal peace negotiations to be conducted at a neutral location of their choosing, with full diplomatic immunity guaranteed for all participants. The silence that followed this announcement stretched across the command center like a physical presence, broken only by the steady hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the ship's massive engines. While every officer present processed the implications of such an unprecedented development, Stone's mind immediately began analyzing the tactical situation from every possible angle, considering the enemy's recent losses at the Battle of Proxima, station where human ingenuity had once again proven superior to alien technology. "Despite being outnumbered nearly 3-to-1 in ships and personnel, sir, their fleet composition suggests this might be legitimate," reported Commander Wilson from the tactical station, his sensor readings showing that the hegemony vessels were maintaining standard diplomatic spacing rather than the aggressive formations typically used for combat operations. The Admiral moved to the central display and began manipulating the holographic representation of local space, studying the positioning of both human and alien forces with the practiced eye of someone who had survived more ambushes and surprise attacks than most people could imagine in their worst nightmares. "Commander, run a full-spectrum analysis on their fleet," Stone ordered, her voice carrying the authority that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. "I want to know everything about their ship configurations, energy signatures, and any unusual equipment they might be carrying aboard those vessels." The analysis revealed that the hegemony ships were indeed configured for diplomatic rather than combat operations, with their primary weapon systems powered down and their defensive shields operating at minimal levels, suggesting either genuine peaceful intentions or an elaborate deception designed to lower human defenses. Captain Miller joined the discussion from his position near the intelligence station, bringing with him classified reports about recent developments in hegemony territory that might explain this sudden shift in their military strategy. Information gathered by deep-cover human operatives who risked everything to provide crucial intelligence. "Admiral, our sources indicate significant internal strife within hegemony space," Miller reported, keeping his voice low enough that only the senior officers could hear the sensitive details. "Multiple worlds are experiencing rebellion, and their military is stretched thin, trying to maintain control over their vast empire." Stone nodded thoughtfully, while continuing to study the tactical display, weighing the potential benefits of peace against the very real possibility that this was simply another hegemony trick designed to eliminate human leadership in a single coordinated strike, a strategy they had attempted before with devastating results. The memory of the massacre at Europa Station remained fresh in every human military officer's mind, where a supposed prisoner exchange had resulted in the complete destruction of the human diplomatic mission and the deaths of over 10,000 civilians, an event that had hardened humanity's resolve to never again trust alien promises. Ma'am, the hegemony delegation is specifically requesting the presence of Earth's senior leadership at the proposed peace conference, Harris added, reading from additional message traffic that continued to arrive through the quantum communication channels. This detail immediately raised additional red flags in Stone's tactical analysis, because the aliens had never shown any interest in human political structures or leadership hierarchies, preferring to deal with military commanders directly, rather than engaging in the complex diplomatic protocols that most civilized species considered standard. They want our leadership concentrated in one location, away from Earth's defensive systems, Stone mused aloud, her suspicions growing stronger with each new piece of information. Either they're genuinely interested in ending this war, or they're planning the most ambitious assassination attempt in galactic history. The command center buzzed with quiet conversations as officers discussed the implications among themselves, while Stone retreated to her private office to contact Earth directly and inform President Foster of this unexpected development, knowing that the final decision would ultimately rest with civilian leadership rather than military commanders. The secure communication channel crackled to life as Stone established contact with the Presidential Emergency Command Center buried deep beneath the ruins of Geneva, where humanity's government had relocated after the hegemony's orbital bombardment of major population centers during the war's early years. Madam President, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention, Stone began, launching into a detailed briefing about the hegemony's peace proposal while simultaneously transmitting all relevant intelligence data through encrypted channels. President Foster's response came after several minutes of careful consideration, her voice carrying the weight of leadership during humanity's most desperate hour. Admiral, what's your professional assessment of this situation? Do you believe there's any possibility that their offer is genuine? Stone paused before answering, knowing that her words might influence a decision that could determine the fate of every human being in the galaxy. Ma'am, every instinct I've developed during this war tells me it's a trap, but we can't afford to ignore even the smallest chance for genuine peace, especially given our current strategic position. The conversation continued for nearly an hour as they discussed every aspect of the proposal, from the tactical implications of attending such a conference to the potential intelligence value of observing hegemony diplomatic protocols firsthand, while always keeping in mind the possibility that this could be humanity's last chance for survival. When the call finally ended, Stone returned to the command center with orders to begin preliminary preparations for what could be either a historic peace conference or the most dangerous military operation in human history, knowing that either way, humanity would face this challenge with the same determination that had carried them through 12 years of seemingly impossible warfare. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's future lay in peaceful coexistence with their former enemies or in the continuation of a war that had already cost millions of lives. But regardless of the outcome, Admiral Stone was determined that humanity would meet this challenge on their own terms, with their eyes wide open and their weapons ready for whatever might come. President Amanda Foster paced the length of her underground office while holographic displays showed real-time feeds from every human military installation across known space, the weight of potential genocide hanging over every decision as she contemplated humanity's response to the hegemony's unexpected peace proposal. 12 years of constant warfare had transformed Earth's government into a lean military machine, where every civilian administrator possessed combat training and every policy decision considered its impact on humanity's survival, creating a leadership structure unlike anything that had existed in human history before the alien invasion began. Secretary of Defense Robert Hayes reviewed intelligence reports that painted an increasingly complex picture of hegemony motivations, with deep-cover human operatives reporting massive troop movements that could indicate either genuine preparation for peace or the largest military deception ever attempted by an alien species. Madam President, our assets within hegemony territory are reporting contradictory intelligence, Hayes began, activating a three-dimensional tactical display that showed enemy fleet positions across multiple star systems. Some sources suggest legitimate internal strife, while others indicate coordinated preparation for a major offensive operation. Foster studied the conflicting reports with the analytical mind that had carried her through years of wartime leadership, knowing that a single wrong decision could result in humanity's complete extinction, while also recognizing that rejecting a genuine peace offer might doom their species to eventual defeat through attrition. Director Patricia. Wells entered the office carrying classified documents that contained humanity's most sensitive intelligence regarding hegemony capabilities and intentions. Information gathered at tremendous cost in human lives over the course of the brutal conflict that had reshaped galactic civilization. Ma'am, I've just received confirmation from 3 independent sources that the hegemony is positioning major fleet elements near the proposed conference location, Wells reported, her expression reflecting the grim reality that every human intelligence officer faced daily. The director activated her secure tablet and began displaying reconnaissance images that showed massive alien warships moving into strategic positions around the neutral world designated for the peace conference, their formations appearing defensive to casual observation, but potentially threatening to experienced military analysts. Foster examined each image carefully while considering the tactical implications, knowing that the hegemony's superior numbers had always been their primary advantage in this conflict, while humanity's edge lay in adaptability and technological innovation under extreme pressure. What about our own military preparations? Foster asked, turning to General David Morrison, whose scarred hands and artificial eye testified to his personal sacrifices during the early years of the war, when human defenses were still being established. Morrison activated a holographic display, showing human fleet deployments across multiple sectors, with ships disguised as merchant vessels and research platforms actually serving as heavily armed warships, ready for immediate deployment. Ma'am, we're implementing Operation Silent Thunder, positioning our most capable units for rapid response, regardless of how this conference develops. The plan that Morrison outlined represented years of careful preparation for exactly this type of scenario, with human engineers having developed weapons and defensive systems that could be concealed within apparently peaceful vessels, allowing Earth's forces to appear compliant with peace treaty requirements while maintaining combat readiness. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the President's chief science advisor, contributed crucial technical analysis regarding the feasibility of concealing advanced military systems within diplomatic equipment, demonstrating humanity's unique ability to find creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Madam President, our engineering teams have successfully miniaturized several weapon systems to the point where they can be integrated into standard diplomatic gear, Warren explained, showing holographic schematics of devices that appeared ceremonial but contained sophisticated military technology. The innovations that Warren described represented a fundamental shift in human military philosophy, moving away from traditional large-scale weapons toward distributed systems that could be concealed within everyday objects, making it nearly impossible for enemies to completely disarm human personnel. Foster reviewed the technical specifications with growing appreciation for humanity's adaptive capabilities, recognizing that their species' greatest strength lay not in raw military power, but in their ability to find unexpected solutions to complex problems that had stymied other civilizations. How confident are we that these concealed systems will remain undetected during standard diplomatic security procedures? Foster asked, knowing that the hegemony's scanning technology was significantly more advanced than anything humanity had possessed before the war began. Warren's response demonstrated the careful thought that had gone into every aspect of the deception. Ma'am, we've tested our concealment methods against captured hegemony scanning equipment, and the detection probability remains below 5% for properly configured devices. The meeting continued for several hours as Foster's advisors presented detailed analyses of every aspect of the proposed peace conference, from the logistics of transporting human leadership safely to the neutral world, to the potential intelligence-gathering opportunities that such close contact with hegemony officials might provide. As the briefing progressed, Foster found herself increasingly convinced that attending the conference represented humanity's best chance for survival, regardless of whether the hegemony's offer was genuine or represented an elaborate trap designed to eliminate human resistance once and for all. General Morrison, I want you to prepare our most experienced units for this mission, Foster decided, her voice carrying the authority that had guided humanity through its darkest hours. If this is a trap, we're going to spring it on our terms with our eyes wide open and our weapons ready. Morrison nodded grimly while activating communication channels to military commanders across human space, beginning the process of assembling the most elite force that humanity could field, knowing that they might be walking into the final battle of their species' existence. The selection process for the diplomatic mission became an exercise in balancing genuine diplomatic capability with combat effectiveness, as Foster's staff identified individuals who could function convincingly as peaceful negotiators, while possessing the skills necessary to fight their way out of a complex ambush. Scenario Admiral Stone received her orders directly from the President, with instructions to command the naval component of the mission, while maintaining the appearance of a routine diplomatic escort. Her ships modified to conceal their true combat capabilities behind facades of peaceful exploration vessels. The engineering teams worked around the clock to complete modifications that would allow human warships to pass superficial inspection while retaining full combat effectiveness, creating vessels that appeared to comply with treaty restrictions while actually representing the pinnacle of human military technology. Captain Rodriguez briefed his Marine units on the unique challenges they would face during the conference, where every gesture and movement would be scrutinized by hegemony security, while they maintained readiness for instant combat if the situation deteriorated. The Marines selected for the mission represented humanity's finest warriors, individuals who had survived the worst battles of the war and developed the experience necessary to function effectively in the complex environment that the peace conference would create. As preparations intensified, Foster found herself reflecting on the irony that humanity's best chance for peace required them to prepare more thoroughly for war than they had at any previous point in the conflict, demonstrating the fundamental mistrust that 12 years of alien aggression had created. The final briefing session brought together all senior personnel who would participate in the mission, with Foster emphasizing that their primary objective remained the preservation of human civilization, regardless of what the hegemony's true intentions might prove to be. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to undertake the most dangerous diplomatic mission in human history, Foster addressed the assembled group. Whether this leads to genuine peace or the final battle of our species depends entirely on our ability to remain prepared for anything, while hoping for the best possible outcome. The mission that Foster authorized represented humanity's willingness to risk everything on the possibility of peace, while never forgetting the lessons that 12 years of warfare had taught them about alien treachery and the importance of maintaining constant vigilance against those who would destroy their species. As the human fleet prepared to depart for the neutral world, where humanity's fate would be decided, Foster could only hope that the preparations her people had made would prove sufficient to protect them from whatever trap the hegemony might have prepared, while still allowing for the possibility that peace might actually be within reach. Golden sunlight reflected off the crystalline amphitheater that rose from Kepler Prime's surface like a monument to diplomatic achievement. Its soaring spires designed to accommodate beings from dozens of different species, while creating an atmosphere of peaceful cooperation that belied the deadly tensions crackling between the assembled delegations. Thousands of spectators from both civilizations filled carefully arranged sections of the massive structure, with hegemony nobles displaying their most impressive ceremonial armor, while human dignitaries wore dress uniforms that concealed enough firepower to level a small city, the perfect embodiment of humanity's approach to this potentially historic. Gathering President Foster stood at her designated position near the central platform, her enhanced vision system scanning the crowd for potential threats while maintaining the composed demeanor expected of a diplomatic leader. Every gesture and expression carefully calculated to project confidence while concealing her readiness. For instant violence, Supreme Chancellor Vorth dominated the opposing platform with the imposing presence that had made him legendary throughout hegemony space. His massive insectoid form adorned with precious metals and ceremonial weapons that supposedly indicated his commitment to peaceful resolution, but could easily serve more sinister purposes. The elaborate pageantry of the ceremony unfolded according to protocols established by neutral mediators, with representatives from multiple species observing the proceedings while carefully maintained energy shields separated the two primary delegations, creating an illusion of security that satisfied diplomatic requirements without actually preventing potential violence. Ambassador Clix approached the central podium, carrying crystalline tablets inscribed with treaty terms in both human and hegemony languages. The documents representing months of careful negotiation conducted through intermediaries, while both species prepared for what they suspected might be their final confrontation. Honored beings of both great civilizations, Clix announced through translation systems that converted his pheromone-based communication into audible speech. Today we witness the conclusion of a conflict that has consumed countless lives and resources, replacing warfare with the promise of mutual cooperation and shared prosperity. Foster listened to the formal declarations while monitoring tactical displays built into her ceremonial jewelry, watching as hegemony fleet movements above the planet showed subtle changes that suggested preparation for combat operations rather than peaceful celebration. Dr. Warren positioned herself strategically near the platform's edge, her scanning equipment disguised as diplomatic recording devices revealing increasing energy signatures from concealed hegemony weapon systems throughout the amphitheater, confirming humanity's worst suspicions about their enemies' true intentions. The treaty signing ceremony proceeded with elaborate ritual as both leaders approached the central podium, their movements carefully choreographed to satisfy diplomatic protocol, while allowing maximum flexibility for rapid tactical response if the situation deteriorated as expected. Sergeant Anderson maintained her position among the human security detail, her enhanced combat systems concealed within dress uniform accessories, while she monitored hegemony troop movements that gradually shifted from ceremonial formations toward tactically advantageous positions throughout the vast structure. "Ma'am, the bugs are definitely getting ready for something," Anderson whispered into her concealed communicator, using coded language that would be meaningless to alien listeners while conveying crucial tactical information to human commanders. Foster acknowledged the warning with an almost imperceptible nod while continuing her diplomatic exchanges with Chancellor Vorth, their conversation covering standard treaty provisions, while both leaders evaluated each other's combat readiness and strategic positioning. The moment of truth arrived as both delegations prepared for the formal signing ceremony, with Chancellor Vorth's demeanor suddenly shifting from diplomatic courtesy to predatory anticipation that confirmed every human suspicion about hegemony intentions regarding this supposed peace conference. President Foster, Vorth declared through his translator while his compound eyes flashed with unmistakable hostility, "Your species has demonstrated remarkable naivety in accepting our invitation to this gathering, making the elimination of human leadership far simpler than our military planners had originally anticipated." The hegemony forces throughout the amphitheater instantly dropped their peaceful pretenses and produced weapons that had been concealed within ceremonial equipment, their coordinated movement demonstrating the careful planning that had gone into this elaborate assassination attempt. Energy beams lanced across the platform as aliens attempted to eliminate Foster and her key advisors in a devastating first strike. But humanity's preparation proved superior to hegemony planning, as personal shields activated, and return fire erupted from concealed weapons throughout the human delegation. Foster's security detail responded with the practiced efficiency of veterans who had survived countless ambushes during 12 years of warfare, their concealed weapon systems proving devastatingly effective against enemies who had expected to face defenseless diplomats rather than heavily armed warriors. "All units, the trap is sprung," Foster shouted into her emergency communicator while diving behind cover. "Execute Protocol Omega immediately and show these aliens what happens when they underestimate human preparedness." Above the planet's atmosphere, Admiral Stone had been monitoring hegemony fleet movements for the past hour and was ready with humanity's response as the alien vessels dropped their facade of peaceful intentions and began powering weapon systems for orbital bombardment. The space battle erupted with devastating fury as concealed human warships revealed their true nature, transforming from apparently harmless diplomatic escorts into heavily armed combat vessels that engaged the surprised hegemony fleet at point-blank range. Stone coordinated the fleet's response from her battle bridge, while targeting displays showed the rapidly evolving engagement. "All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels first. If we can disrupt their coordination, then their numerical advantage becomes significantly less effective. The human ships moved with practiced precision developed during years of desperate warfare, their crews having drilled extensively for exactly this scenario during the journey to Kepler Prime. Turning what should have been a massacre into a deadly trap for their would-be executioners, Captain Rodriguez engaged multiple hegemony vessels, simultaneously while providing covering fire for smaller human ships. His vessels concealed weapon systems proving far more effective than the aliens had anticipated when they planned their elaborate deception. On the planet's surface, the ground battle raged throughout the crystalline amphitheater as human and hegemony forces clashed with savage intensity, the aliens discovering that their supposedly defenseless targets were actually elite warriors, armed with humanity's most advanced combat technology. Anderson led her Marines in a fighting withdrawal toward predetermined defensive positions. Her squads concealed weapons creating devastation among hegemony forces who had expected to face ceremonial guards rather than battle-hardened veterans of humanity's longest war. The tide of battle began shifting as human preparation proved superior to alien deception, with concealed weapon systems and tactical innovations demonstrating once again that humanity's greatest strength lay in their ability to adapt and overcome seemingly impossible odds. Foster coordinated both ground and orbital operations from her improvised command post, using communication equipment that had been disguised as ceremonial items while directing the complex battle that would determine whether humanity survived or faced complete extinction. The ceremony that was supposed to end with humanity's destruction instead became the opening engagement of the war's final phase, as the species that had refused to surrender for 12 years once again demonstrated their determination to survive regardless of the odds they faced. Chancellor Vorth watched his carefully planned ambush collapse with growing desperation as human forces proved far more capable than hegemony intelligence had suggested, his grand strategy failing catastrophically against opponents who had learned never to trust their enemies' promises. The Battle of Kepler Prime reached its climax as both sides committed their full strength to a confrontation that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy, with humanity's refusal to accept defeat once again, confounding enemies who thought they understood the limits of human determination and ingenuity. Explosive decompression alarms screamed throughout the hegemony flagship as Admiral Stone's concentrated firepower overwhelmed its defensive systems, the massive alien vessel listing helplessly while secondary explosions rippled across its hull, like deadly fireworks against the star-filled void of space. The destruction of the enemy command ship sent shockwaves through both the orbital battle and the ground engagement below, as hegemony forces suddenly found themselves without centralized coordination, while human units pressed their advantage with the ruthless efficiency of veterans who had learned to exploit every enemy weakness. Stone coordinated her fleet's response. From the Determination's bridge while tactical displays showed the rapidly changing situation, all vessels maintained pressure on the remaining enemy ships, but prioritize capture over destruction. We need prisoners and intelligence about their invasion plans. The human warships that had been disguised as peaceful diplomatic escorts revealed their true capabilities as they systematically dismantled the confused hegemony fleet, their advanced weapons systems and superior tactics proving devastatingly effective against enemies who had expected to face helpless targets. Captain Rodriguez brought his ship alongside a crippled hegemony cruiser, while his Marines prepared for boarding operations. Admiral, requesting permission to capture enemy intelligence assets, their communication systems might contain valuable information about other hegemony operations. The boarding action commenced with textbook precision as human Marines breached the alien vessel's hull and fought their way through corridors filled with desperate defenders, their superior training and equipment overcoming hegemony resistance with systematic efficiency. On Kepler Prime's surface, President Foster had established a command post using equipment concealed throughout the human delegation, coordinating both ground and orbital forces, while energy bolts scorched the air around her improvised position. Sergeant Anderson's Marines had turned their assigned defensive positions into killing zones, using weapons and equipment that had been disguised as ceremonial gear, their plasma charges and concealed firearms creating devastation among hegemony forces who had planned for a massacre rather than a battle contact left flank. Anderson shouted while diving behind crystalline cover as hegemony warriors attempted to outflank their position. Her return fire from a weapon disguised as a ceremonial baton, sending multiple aliens spinning to the ground with smoking wounds. The human forces demonstrated once again that their species' greatest military advantage lay not in superior technology, but in their ability to adapt and improvise under impossible circumstances, turning every available resource into potential weapons while maintaining tactical cohesion under extreme pressure. Dr. Warren activated emergency beacons hidden within diplomatic gifts while simultaneously jamming hegemony communication frequencies. Ma'am, their ground forces are experiencing significant coordination problems. The jamming is proving more effective than our most optimistic projections. The technological innovations that Warren had helped develop were proving their worth as hegemony troops found themselves isolated and confused, unable to coordinate their attacks, while human forces maintained perfect communication through encrypted channels that the aliens could not intercept. Chancellor Vorth attempted to rally his scattered forces while realizing that his elaborate trap had become a catastrophic defeat, his carefully planned genocide transforming into humanity's greatest victory since the war began 12 years earlier. Impossible. Vorth snarled through his failing translator while energy bolts exploded around his position. The humans arrived completely defenseless according to our intelligence reports and treaty requirements. Foster's response came between bursts of covering fire as she demonstrated the tactical leadership that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. Chancellor, we did arrive exactly as specified in your treaty terms. We brought no weapons, only ceremonial equipment and standard protective gear. The irony of humanity's deception was lost on the hegemony leader whose species had never encountered enemies capable of such creative interpretation of diplomatic protocols, their rigid thinking proving to be a critical weakness when facing human adaptability above the planet. The space battle reached its climax as the damaged hegemony flagship made one final attempt to achieve bombardment position, its massive main guns charging for a strike that would eliminate human leadership, despite the failure of the ground assault. Stone watched her tactical displays with grim determination as the alien vessel slowly rotated toward the planet's surface, knowing that the determination was too far away to intercept, while other human ships remained fully engaged with their own targets. Captain Miller, commanding the UES Vigilance, activated his ship's experimental ramming system while calculating an intercept course. Admiral, I can reach their flagship in time, but it will require a direct collision course that might not leave enough time for crew evacuation. Negative, Captain, Stone replied firmly. Execute Contingency Plan 7. All ships prepare for synchronized strike on my command. We're not sacrificing any vessels when coordination can achieve the same result. The human fleet suddenly broke off their individual engagements and converged on the hegemony flagship with suicidal determination. Their concentrated firepower delivered at point-blank range, overwhelming the alien vessel's defenses despite massive casualties among the attacking ships. The flagship's destruction marked the turning point of the entire engagement, as remaining hegemony vessels found themselves leaderless and confused, their rigid command structure proving incapable of adapting. To the loss of centralized control, Stone seized the initiative immediately. All ships, press the attack while they're disorganized. Target engines and weapon systems. I want as many prisoners as possible for interrogation about their broader military plans. The systematic destruction of hegemony resistance continued for several hours as human forces demonstrated the tactical superiority that had allowed them to survive 12 years of warfare against numerically superior enemies. Anderson's Marines had successfully secured their defensive perimeter while capturing dozens of enemy prisoners, their interrogation revealing the full scope of the hegemony's planned genocide and the locations of invasion fleets positioned near human colonies. Ma'am, according to prisoner statements, this attack was just the opening phase of a coordinated offensive involving 12 separate invasion fleets, Anderson reported to Foster. They expected our leadership's elimination to trigger the collapse of human resistance. The intelligence gathered from captured enemies painted a terrifying picture of hegemony planning, with massive invasion forces prepared to strike every major human world simultaneously once word arrived that the leadership had been eliminated. Foster processed this information while coordinating the final phases of the ground battle, knowing that humanity's survival now depended on their ability to use captured intelligence and communication systems to turn the enemy's own strategy against them. Dr. Warren had successfully penetrated hegemony data networks using scanning equipment, disguised as ceremonial items, her access providing real-time intelligence about enemy fleet movements and operational plans throughout their territory. Madam President, I'm downloading complete tactical databases from their command systems, Warren reported while her fingers flew across concealed control interfaces. This intelligence could provide strategic advantages that would change the entire course of the war. The victory at Kepler Prime was becoming more significant with each passing hour, as the full scope of captured intelligence revealed hegemony, weaknesses and operational procedures that human strategists had only theorized about during years of desperate warfare. Stone coordinated the capture of additional enemy vessels while maintaining communication with ground forces, her tactical genius proving once again that human military leadership represented the finest tradition of adaptive warfare under impossible circumstances. The battle that the hegemony had planned as humanity's final defeat, instead, became the foundation for a counteroffensive that would carry the war to alien territory for the first time since the conflict began, demonstrating once again that underestimating human determination was a fatal mistake for any species foolish enough to make that error. Silence settled over the crystalline amphitheater as the last hegemony resistance collapsed under sustained human firepower, with alien survivors surrendering in growing numbers, while their leadership realized that their elaborate genocide attempt had failed catastrophically. Chancellor Vorth found himself surrounded by human marines whose weapons remained trained on him despite his obvious defeat, his once impressive ceremonial armor now scarred and smoking from energy weapon impacts that had barely missed ending his life. President Foster approached the defeated alien leader with the calm confidence of someone who had survived 12 years of existential warfare, her ceremonial attire bearing battle damage that told its own story about humanity's refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. Chancellor, Foster began while maintaining her diplomatic composure despite the devastation surrounding them. Your species made a fundamental error in assuming that following treaty requirements meant we would arrive unprepared for treachery. The human victory was becoming more complete with each passing minute, as Admiral Stone's fleet finished mopping up the scattered hegemony vessels, their superior tactics and preparation proving decisive against enemies who had relied on overwhelming numbers rather than adaptive strategy. Der Warren's penetration of enemy data systems was yielding intelligence that exceeded humanity's most optimistic expectations, revealing not only the locations of invasion fleets but also detailed information about hegemony military capabilities and strategic planning. Madam President, I've accessed their complete operational database, Warren reported while downloading terabytes of classified information. They've positioned invasion fleets at 12 different human colonies, all waiting for confirmation that our leadership had been eliminated. The scope of the hegemony's planned genocide was staggering in its ambition and coordination, with hundreds of ships positioned to strike simultaneously once word arrived that humanity's government and military leadership had been destroyed. Foster studied the intelligence reports while coordinating with Admiral Stone regarding the strategic implications, knowing that this information provided humanity with unprecedented opportunities to turn the enemy's own plans against them. Admiral Stone, how quickly can we transmit false confirmation signals to those invasion fleets? Foster asked through her secure communication channel, already formulating plans to exploit hegemony communication protocols. Stone's response demonstrated the tactical thinking that had made her legendary among human military commanders. Ma'am, we've captured intact communication equipment from their flagship. We can transmit authentication codes that will convince those fleets to proceed with their attacks, according to schedule. The plan that emerged from this intelligence was audacious, even by human standards, involving the use of captured hegemony systems to coordinate fake confirmation signals that would lure enemy invasion fleets into carefully prepared ambushes. Captain Rodriguez had successfully captured 3 enemy vessels with their crews intact, providing additional sources of intelligence about hegemony procedures and authentication protocols that would make the deception more convincing. Admiral, the prisoner interrogations are revealing detailed information about their operational security measures, Rodriguez reported. We can replicate their communication patterns accurately enough to fool automated response systems. The human military machine swung into operation with the efficiency developed during years of desperate warfare, as ships that had been held in reserve throughout the conflict now deployed to intercept the approaching invasion. Fleet Sergeant Anderson supervised the processing of captured hegemony personnel while extracting tactical information about enemy combat doctrines and equipment capabilities. Her interrogation techniques proving effective at breaking down alien resistance to cooperation. Ma'am, the prisoners are providing extensive details about hegemony military organization, Anderson reported to President Foster. Their entire command structure is based on rigid hierarchy and predetermined response patterns. The intelligence that Anderson gathered revealed fundamental weaknesses in hegemony, thinking that explained their consistent failures when facing human adaptive tactics, their inability to deviate from established plans proving to be a critical vulnerability. Foster coordinated the complex deception operation while maintaining diplomatic communications with Earth and the human colonies, informing them about the victory at Kepler Prime while preparing them for the counteroffensive that would follow. The false signals transmitted through captured hegemony equipment were masterpieces of strategic deception, convincing enemy invasion fleets that the genocide had succeeded according to plan, while actually directing them into positions where human defensive forces could engage them individually. Admiral Chen's task force was the first to report success, intercepting a hegemony invasion fleet in the Tau Ceti system and destroying it completely before the aliens realized they had been deceived, demonstrating the effectiveness of humanity's new strategic approach, Madam President. Tau Ceti reports complete success, Stone announced. Admiral Chen's ambush destroyed the entire enemy force with minimal human casualties. The deception worked perfectly. The victory reports continued arriving throughout the day as human forces systematically dismantled invasion fleets that had been positioned for humanity's destruction, each successful engagement providing additional intelligence and captured equipment. Chancellor Vorth listened to these reports with growing despair as he realized that his species' greatest military operation had become their most catastrophic defeat. This is impossible. The ruling council's strategies have conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. How can one species reverse everything we have accomplished? Foster's response carried the weight of human history and the determination that had sustained her people through their darkest hours. Chancellor, your people made the same mistake that every enemy of humanity has made throughout our existence. You assumed that superior technology and overwhelming numbers guaranteed victory. The strategic situation had completely reversed in less than 24 hours, with the hegemony's carefully planned genocide, providing humanity with the intelligence and captured resources necessary to launch their own offensive operations against alien territory. Dr. Warren's analysis of captured technology revealed numerous vulnerabilities in supposedly superior hegemony equipment, with human engineers already working to adapt and improve alien designs for use in the upcoming counteroffensive. Ma'am, their technology is actually less advanced than we believed, Warren reported while examining captured weapons and defensive systems. They've relied on mass production rather than innovation, creating equipment that's effective but not particularly sophisticated. The revelation that hegemony military superiority was largely illusory transformed human strategic planning, as commanders realized that their forces possessed technological advantages that had been obscured by the enemy's numerical superiority. Admiral Stone coordinated the fleet's preparation for departure from Kepler Prime, while maintaining communication with human forces throughout the galaxy, her tactical displays showing a completely transformed strategic situation. All ships, prepare for Phase 3 operations, Stone announced through fleet communication channels. We're taking this war to the hegemony home systems and showing them what happens when they threaten human civilization. The human vessels that had survived the battle were being rapidly resupplied and reinforced with captured alien equipment, creating hybrid warships that combined the best aspects of both civilizations. Military technology. Captain Rodriguez supervised the integration of hegemony weapon systems into human vessels, while his engineering teams worked to understand and improve upon alien defensive technologies, their efforts producing significant enhancements to human combat capabilities. The prisoners captured during the battle provided detailed intelligence about hegemony home system defenses and political structure, revealing internal divisions that humanity could exploit during their upcoming offensive operations. Anderson's interrogation teams had identified key hegemony military installations and political centers, mapping out target priorities for the human counteroffensive while gathering intelligence about alien industrial capabilities. Madam President, we've identified 17 critical hegemony installations whose destruction would cripple their ability to continue the war, Anderson reported. Their centralized military structure makes them vulnerable to targeted strikes. Foster reviewed the target assessments while coordinating with her military commanders regarding the scope and timing of humanity's response, knowing that this opportunity might not come again if they failed to exploit their advantages. The transformation from desperate defense to strategic offense represented everything that made humanity unique among galactic civilizations, their ability to adapt and overcome seemingly impossible odds while never losing sight of their ultimate objectives. Chancellor Vorth's final attempt to rally his scattered forces proved futile as human communication jamming continued to disrupt. Hegemony coordination while captured alien equipment provided detailed intelligence about enemy movements and intentions. Your resistance is admirable but ultimately pointless, Vorth declared through his failing translator. The hegemony controls hundreds of worlds and can replace these losses easily. Foster's response demonstrated the confidence that had carried humanity through 12 years of existential warfare. Chancellor, you're about to discover that controlling territory and maintaining control are entirely different challenges, especially when facing opponents who refuse to accept defeat. The final phase of operations at Kepler Prime involved securing all captured intelligence and equipment while preparing for immediate departure toward hegemony territory. With human forces eager to press their advantage before the enemy could recover from their massive losses, Stone's fleet departed the neutral world, carrying with them the hopes of humanity and the promise that no alien civilization would ever again underestimate the determination and ingenuity of the human species. The peace treaty had indeed been an elaborate trap, but humanity's decision to carry concealed weapons had transformed certain death into decisive victory, proving once again that their species' greatest strength lay in preparation for the worst while hoping for the best possible outcome. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler Prime, Admiral Stone stood in the command center of the captured hegemony fortress world that had once served as a major military headquarters, watching human engineers integrate alien technology with Earth-designed systems while former enemies worked alongside their captors. The transformation of the galaxy's power structure had occurred with breathtaking speed as humanity's counteroffensive swept through hegemony space, liberating enslaved worlds while dismantling the military infrastructure that had supported alien dominance for over 3 centuries. President Foster reviewed intelligence reports that painted a picture of complete strategic reversal, with hegemony forces retreating toward their core worlds while human fleets advanced through territory that had never before seen Earth's flag flying in victory. Ma'am, the latest liberation reports indicate that 17 former hegemony client worlds have requested admission to the Human Alliance, Secretary Hayes announced, while updating the holographic display that showed rapidly expanding human influence. Throughout the region, the psychological impact of humanity's victory had proven as devastating to hegemony morale as their military losses, with entire alien fleets surrendering rather than face opponents who had transformed from victims into conquerors. In less than a year, Dr. Warren supervised the integration of captured alien technology into human systems while leading teams of scientists who were unraveling the secrets of hegemony science and engineering, their research producing innovations that advanced human civilization by decades. Madam President, the technological intelligence we've gathered has revealed that hegemony science has been stagnant for over 2 centuries, Warren reported during her weekly briefing. They've relied on conquering other species rather than developing their own capabilities. The revelation that the supposedly superior alien civilization had actually been technologically inferior to humanity in most areas, explained many of the tactical advantages that Earth's forces had enjoyed during the conflict. Chancellor Vorth remained in human custody, while serving as a valuable source of intelligence about hegemony, political structure, and military organization. His cooperation having been secured through a combination of pragmatic self-interest and genuine respect for human capabilities. Admiral Stone, your species continues to surprise me, Vorth admitted during one of their regular discussions. The Hegemony Council believed that conquest was the only path to galactic dominance, but you have demonstrated that cooperation can be far more effective. Stone's response reflected the philosophical changes that victory had brought to human strategic thinking. Chancellor, our experience has taught us that lasting power comes from building alliances rather than subjugating enemies, though we're perfectly capable of fighting when cooperation proves impossible. The human approach to managing conquered territory differed dramatically from previous hegemony methods, with Earth's administrators focusing on rebuilding and integration rather than exploitation and suppression. Captain Rodriguez had been assigned to oversee the training of former hegemony military personnel who wished to serve in the expanded Human Alliance forces, his programs demonstrating that cooperation could replace conquest as the foundation of interstellar civilization. Admiral, the integration training programs are exceeding all expectations, Rodriguez reported during the monthly command review. Former enemy personnel are proving highly effective when given proper leadership and clear objectives. The success of these integration efforts was creating a new model for galactic governance that other species throughout the region began studying and emulating, recognizing that humanity's approach offered benefits that pure military conquest could never achieve. Sergeant Anderson had established training academies on multiple worlds, where former enemies learned human tactical doctrines while teaching Earth's forces about alien combat techniques, creating a synthesis of military knowledge that enhanced everyone's capabilities. Ma'am, the cross-training programs are producing remarkable results, Anderson reported to President Foster. Our people are learning valuable techniques while former hegemony forces are discovering the advantages of adaptive thinking over rigid doctrine. The cultural exchange that accompanied military cooperation was transforming both human and alien societies, creating new forms of art, science, and philosophy that neither species could have developed independently. Foster addressed the Galactic Council during its first session in over a century, with representatives from dozens of species gathering, to discuss the new political reality that humanity's victory had created throughout the region. Fellow beings, we stand at a crossroads in galactic history, Foster declared to the assembled delegates. We can choose to build a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect, or we can repeat the mistakes that led to centuries of warfare and suffering. The human alliance that emerged from these discussions represented a fundamentally different approach to interstellar governance, with membership based on voluntary association rather than conquest or coercion. Admiral Stone coordinated the final phases of the hegemony pacification while establishing new defensive protocols that would prevent any future attempts at galactic conquest, her strategic planning ensuring that humanity's victory would create lasting peace. The technological innovations developed during the conflict were being shared freely with Alliance members, creating rapid advancement in fields ranging from medicine to space travel while demonstrating humanity's commitment to mutual benefit. Dr. Warren's research teams had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light communication and advanced material science, discoveries that promised to revolutionize civilization throughout the galaxy while establishing Earth as the center of scientific advancement. Chancellor Vorth participated in the establishment of new governmental structures that would replace the hegemony's authoritarian system, his insights proving valuable in creating institutions that could maintain order without resorting to oppression. President Foster, I must acknowledge that humanity's approach to governance surpasses anything the hegemony ever achieved, Vorth stated during the Constitutional Convention. Your species has demonstrated that strength and wisdom can coexist in ways we never imagined possible. The peace treaty that had been intended as humanity's death warrant instead became the foundation document for a new galactic civilization, with its provisions for cooperation and mutual respect, serving as the basis for expanded interstellar law. Foster reflected on the irony that the hegemony's attempt at genocide had created the conditions for unprecedented cooperation between species that had previously been separated by fear and mistrust. The weapons that humanity had carried to the peace conference, concealed but ready for use, had saved not only their own species but had created opportunities for freedom and prosperity that extended throughout the galaxy. Stone's final report to Earth summarized the transformation that had occurred since that fateful day at Kepler Prime when humanity had chosen to trust but verify, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best possible outcome. The peace treaty was indeed a trap, Stone concluded in her address to the Human Alliance Assembly, but our refusal to arrive defenseless transformed certain death into decisive victory, proving once again that preparation and determination can overcome any odds. The galaxy would remember the Battle of Kepler Prime as the moment when humanity demonstrated that the greatest weapon any species could possess was the wisdom to prepare for war while working for peace, ensuring that freedom and justice would prevail over tyranny and oppression for generations to come.